The button. Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Well, actually, no plan whatsoever, and I really enjoy it when we have no plan, and you should too. So make sure you like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for The Collective, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show, and I do actually want to get your guys' questions, so make sure you send them in, and we can answer those throughout. If you have not yet, make sure you are signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter that goes out every Sunday, talks about all things collective, as well as gives you a little bit of brain candy to chew on throughout the week. Other than that, Shaun, how's the mountains treating you?
Yeah, good. Just came upstairs from down in the basement where I was slapping the heavy bag around. I got to show you this because personally, it's not a great way to start the show. In fact, I'll probably regret it later. But I'm going to show you something that I personally find very amusing. But I got to stand up and show you my jeans, okay?
I dig it. Let's see it.
All right.
Ooh, fancy. Yep.
They're my buddy's jeans.
Are you buddies with a one of the Willy Wonka dudes, the Oompa Loompas?
Totally. Well, when you see the video, like I think I called them in my post that I just put up, the Summer Urban Tactical Capris, I believe.
Nice.
They're like they're stretch jeans and they're super tight and they come up to my mid calf. And it's 2026's summer look. But what I'm really enjoying, when you see the video later or whatever, like I'm zapping the bag pretty good in my buddy's jeans. And he's going to be seeing that later today. And it's going to be all up in his grill.
He'll probably sit there thinking, going like, is it the jeans? Could I do something like that?
That's right. And we're very good friends, and we're both martial artists as well, and it's going to freaking drive him crazy.
I love it. Just a quick call out here. Dom Duke jumped in on the Instagram side, said, good day, folks. Good to see you, Dom. And then Catherine Hirschfeld jumped in on the YouTube side here, said, good morning, PST. You are keeping me company while I'm fencing. Ooh. I got lots of questions on that one. Are you like fencing?
Both ways, I know.
Or are you like fencing? It's a tough one to figure out. And then Dan C jumps in here and says, good morning, gentlemen. Let's kick some ass. Tactical capris. Ass hugging for ass kicking. Tactical capris.
I mean, it was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I was torn as to whether to put the video up because, like, the internet as a whole, at least maybe, I don't know, a much younger generation than mine, like a lot of their social media feed is all ass shots.
Yeah.
You know, it's all like it's a zoom out from their gym ass,
mm-hmm.
You know? And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this video might be about a gym or it might be another ass shot. And like I rarely do that. But today, because I've only got the one lens on my Sony a6700 and it's a really tight lens. And so my basement, quote unquote, gym is not that big. So, like, you're going to see some ass shots in the video today, and I can't help it. It's a constraint of the lens and my basement.
Right.
But I don't run my life like that. I don't run my life like that, so.
I love it. This is fantastic. Catherine Hirschfeld jumps in here. Livestock. There you go. Fencing for livestock. Yeah, that makes sense. Love the jeans.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I dig it. Yeah. And that is that's a long, difficult job. I've done it myself a number of times. It is tough. Let me ask you, Catherine.
That was my first summer job, actually. Yeah, when I was growing up in Grand Cache, and I've had a few jobs, you know, like dishwasher. I did all the little menial jobs as growing up as a kid.
As did I.
I think as every kid should. In fact, both of our boys did. And before Keegan went over to Japan, he did his last shift at the laundromat, where his job was just washing, drying, and folding towels and bed sheets and all the things for hotels and businesses and whoever. Like, man, don't no one should ever be so high up on that horse that they can to look down their boot and smell something on the heel of it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
so, anyway, my first proper summer job, beyond all of the menial dishwasher jobs, a full block of summer, was Grand Cache. I was hired by the town of Grand Cache, the municipality, I guess, to paint fences all summer long. And it was a bonkers hot summer. And I just sat there with, believe it or not, a cassette deck. It was about that big, that wide, and about that thick. And I'd put my cassette in, click it down, and hit play and paint fences all summer long, white picket fences. And all of the fences were the same because the fences were maintained by the town.
Yep.
And so, like, I painted hundreds of houses worth of fences. And, like, I don't know, maybe when I was younger, I hadn't really developed my do it right or do it again attitude. Like, I worked pretty hard, I had a good work ethic, but towards the end of the summer, I wasn't feeling it. And here's why. It wasn't like all the drudgery, because I can put up with drudgery. It wasn't like the adversity, because I can put up with that. It was the guy who was, quote unquote, our boss that I had a problem with. He was an adult. I was half his age. I was just a kid. And he'd drive by in his truck and, like, not even have the common courtesy to get out of it and come and see how we're doing. He'd just wind down his window, put his elbow on it, and bark at us. You missed a spot. You did. And, like, I wasn't feeling the love, man. I wasn't feeling the leadership. And so at the end of the summer, I of course I had to trim all around all the fences and all the thing, had to mow all the lawn, do all of that as well, of course. But towards the end, if I didn't do a great trimming job before I start painting, I'd just frickin' paint the grass.
Yeah.
I was over it. But when
Yep.
I started the summer, that's not how I started. And so, like, I deviated, I went sloppy because I just disconnected from the purpose of it all, just because of that boss. Poor leadership.
It's an interesting thought pattern too, because when you do something, especially heavy, let's say something laborious, I can't say heavy, but something laborious where you just have to labor through it.
Yeah, and menial.
Yeah. And if you don't have that little spark of purpose or that little spark of leadership, somebody to, like, okay, yeah, if you get here, then you'll see the end result. If you don't have that, yeah, that slack, just it's not worth the effort to get it right. And yeah, I can see painting the grass, absolutely. White grass, done.
Oh, yeah.
And I was kind of giggling because when you were talking, I was like, well, hello, Huck Finn. You're gonna go whitewash some fences, right? Like, it's such
100.
It is such a thing.
I was at that age where I'd read the book, of course, and it was relatively fresh in my mind. There was a lot of irony, or a lot of comparisons between what was going on and what I was actually living in reality. And you know what? Here's an interesting thought for you. Just curious as to, because we've got literally nothing to talk about now other than we like hanging out and etc.
Yep.
So I got an idea for you that I'm curious about. I'm going to paint a picture. Thank you for recognizing that pun. And so we're allowed to have fun, right?
I'm tracking. I'm good. We're
Tracking.
good.
Okay,
Hit
we're
it.
good.
Let's
Right
do
on,
it.
let's go. So when I first started the summer job, my purpose was pride. I was not proud of my efforts. That's inverted. I was proud of my town. Like, I was trying to have some civic pride. I was trying to make the fences look good. And then from one house to the next, it had to look the same, good. And then I'd get 6 or 8 or 10 in a row. I could look down and think, man, that block is looking good. And that's like, I identified with the town / I identified with the army. And then, as the summer unfolded, like, my boss wasn't great. And so, like, my pride in the organization started to slip. And I was young. I didn't have anywhere to like redirect it, or no one was sitting down next to me giving me the wisdom, and I didn't know how to do it. So I just freaking, it's not like I cratered in, but it was a slippery
Oh, yes.
slope that I'd never experienced before. I didn't even recognize it. All I can do is contextually say at the start of the summer, I was in it to win it for the town. And at the end of the summer, I felt like, screw y'all, like just jerking me around and like it got a bad attitude to some degree.
Hmm.
Not as bad as that, but I'm contrasting. And so just leadership, man. I didn't know it at the time, but it made me lose my sense of the why of the pride of the moment. I didn't have pride in my job. I didn't have pride in myself. I didn't have pride in being part of that little summer job. You know, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great point. And before I get into my thoughts, I want to touch on this. Satch Emotion jumped in here. He says, "Sounds like the last 2 years of my career." Can see you, Satch, first off, but yeah, I feel you on that one. Dan C then jumps in and he says, "I may need a crying game shower before the end of this episode with your jeans." And Catherine Hirschfeld jumped in here and says, "I hate painting fences. We were just doing repair work, so wire, some barb, and electric tape for the horses." Yeah. That's the fun part when you're working out in the country, especially with horses. Just walking around with a pair of wire clippers and being able to do quick repairs.
Wiring's
and
still hard work, you know?
Oh, it is 100%.
Like,
And just walking the
depending on the
fence line
gauge of the wire.
that is a long day. Just walking the fence line and
Dude,
fixing
it
stuff
is.
along the way.
It is.
But
And
to
by
your
the
point,
way,
and what?
so at the start of the summer, you walk the fence with as you're wiring, and you're identifying every millimeter,
Mm-hmm.
like you're on task. But by the end of the summer, half of your heels are worn away. You're freaking tired. Everything looks the same.
Knees are screaming at you.
You're only scanning every foot or
Yeah.
two.
Yep.
You know.
So there, I got 2 points on this. First off, to your original thought, this is what happened to me at 1CR. It was the same deal.
That's right.
I
As
had
I
a-
was saying it, I was thinking of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I've said many years that I had, at the end of it, I had zero pride in my unit. I had all kinds of pride in my trade and in the military itself,
Yeah.
but the unit, no.
Yeah.
But also to to that point about fencing is like when you are walking the line and you walk it over and over and over again. This is one of the things we had to manage in Afghanistan when we were metal detecting. So when we're looking for IDs and you're scanning the ground, you're literally staring at a patch of dirt that's about a meter by a meter as you move. And that patch of dirt doesn't change much. And it can become very easy to lose yourself into the complacency of just like, well, okay, I think I cleared that, or oh, yeah, that's fine. Okay,
we
that's
did an
not.
episode on this, or not
did
a
a whole-
full
yeah.
episode, but
A piece on it.
It was a big one anyway.
Yeah, and but the concept there is that if you forget why you're doing it, it's very easy to slide down that slope. And to your point about civic pride, like if you really have pride in your town and you're like, I'm going to make these fences the best painted fences this town has ever seen, it is real easy to derail that with somebody that just does not care,
It is. It is.
especially if that person is at a position of power.
It is. Or yeah, maybe it's not that I'm trying to be careful with language because you chose the right word to some degree. I just want to say that like we could be peers. We could have been on the job 10 years, both doing a great job. We're peers. There's no power hierarchy involved. We're equals to some degree. But for whatever reason, things are hard at home for you and you started drinking, you're not sleeping, whatever. You show up every morning, you're kind of like degrading in your work ethic, your ability to responsibly and reliably perform. And now you're becoming a bit of a safety hazard. And then I'm not your boss, but I'm freaking going to step in.
Mhm.
And depending on what's required at the moment, I'm going to step in and say, hey, let's talk, or hey, what's going on, or hey, you, I almost died today because of you, you dummy. Let's step out back. Whatever it takes. And so that moment is has so many ways to play it from the A to Z of the playbook, but something's got to be played in that moment. Whether you're a boss or not, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. And, we've said it many times on the show that leadership at any level, right? It's not about particularly being in a job that is of a hierarchical, elevated position. You have leadership potential in anything that you do. So absolutely, we should be engaging people. And I want to ask you this on that, is that when does it become the responsibility of the people around you to check you, because there's going to be days that you just aren't great. There's going to be days that, like, you know, didn't sleep, kids were up late, blah, 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 all the things. And you show up to work and you're just not 100%. And you don't need somebody jumping down your neck right there and be like, hey, man, you're not up to standard, blah, blah, blah. We're going to sort this out right now. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 days later, wherever the line is, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on?
It's the pattern. It's the pattern, forming the pattern. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to make any universal statements, really. Today, I'm trying not to. What I said like a few minutes ago, it's not a dogmatic statement. It's not dogma. Just generally speaking, there are patterns to life. And, you know, if someone shows up and they're a bit rough, the first time you ever notice them rough, I make a note of it. Like, I'm looking for, I wonder what's going on there. And depending on the situation, depending on the maybe consequential possibilities of the outcome of the moment, like if there's heavy machinery involved, if there's weapons involved, if there's lives involved, if there's teaching another generation moments involved, like if there's not just the hazards of the moment, but the hazards of the future. Like if I turn my blind eye to bad advice, or if I turn my blind eye to, that 3 years from now, that dude he's gonna pay a massive consequence for that poor advice. It depends on the moment, is what I'm saying. Every situation is boutique, but generally speaking, like, I will note it once, and if it's not overly consequential in the moment, I'll keep my eye out for it a second time. 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
I've formed a pattern on 3 guaranteed. Typically on 2 is a loose correlation, but 3, there's the pattern. And then we have to talk about the pattern, not just about the isolated moment. I'll refer back to the first moment, perhaps, reinforced by the second moment. But today, the reason we're talking is because of this third moment, dude. What's going on? You know?
And, you know, I like this, and it brings up the thought pattern of the responsibility of your friends, right? Like, your friends should be not so much calling you out on a regular basis, but they should be checking in with you to, like, if you're having an off day, you show up to work, the people that you work with shouldn't be afraid to come and say, hey, man, like, we're noticing you're having an off day. Maybe we should sort this out. I have an example of this. So we were in Wainwright, as you know, one does in Edmonton, always in Wainwright. And we were doing an explosive setup, and one of the master corporals that was in my section came up, started setting up the time fuse for a burn to make sure that we were getting everything right and doing all the proper procedures.
Like, off to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had just kind of started his own stuff, and I walked over to just check in on him, like, hey, man, you need help? How can I jump in?
I got to ask questions.
Okay.
Because there's, you know, in the next 30 seconds, you'll give out some details, and I'll have 1,000 questions.
Okay.
And the questions will shape the conversation, so I got to keep interjecting.
Hit me.
So, did he have a direct supervisor?
Yes.
And did the direct supervisor say, hey, can you go sort that stuff out? Or, like, no one was tracking anyone at that time?
So the sergeant was off at orders. We were trying to preset to get ourselves ready. So we had some, we were doing the time fuse burn to make sure that we knew the calculations so that we could have them ready for when he came back with orders.
So was anyone else aware that he was independently operating off to the side on that moment?
Just me.
Okay. And you just happened to notice it, or did you notice, had you had communication with it prior?
We had talked. So, like, yeah,
Okay, check.
I was running the stores at that point in time. I was a corporal. He was the master corporal, so he was actually senior to me. He came and said
it to him at that point,
and I was like, "Yep, here's the stuff." So I knew what was going on.
That is the chain. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then when I went over to check on him, because it looked like he was struggling with something, like he was doing a lot of like thinking motions, and I could only see him from behind. But I went in to check on him, and he was in the
I
midst.
got questions.
Okay, hit me.
Just back it up here for a sec. So you noticed that he was struggling, we'll call it.
Yep.
But had you noticed something before that?
Yes.
And so was that your second moment where you noticed him off to the side starting to stare at the sun and struggle? Was that number 2 within a brief period of time? Was that number 3? Was that number 12? Was the pattern already formed before you handed him the debt cord?
That would have
Do you
been
know what I'm
number.
saying?
I do know what you're saying. That would have been
Okay.
number 2 of that day.
Check.
This guy kind of required a little bit more supervision just in general. And he had just recently been promoted to Master Corporal, so he was now in charge and kind of left to his own device to see if he was able to manage. And I just
Still
wanted to
figuring
keep
it
an
out.
eye on him. That was more than anything.
That's the right thing to do. Yeah.
But so I came up to him, I realized what he was doing, that he had not spread out the time fuse on the back of the deck. He had spread out debt cord on the back of the deck. And he was measuring debt cord as if it was time fuse in order to burn the debt cord. And I was just like, whoa, like, what is going on? Immediate stoppage, just like, no, we're not doing any of this. And I pulled him off to the side so he wasn't in front of the troops. And I was just like, dude, what is going on? And he was just like, man, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's things. And I was like, you know what? Let me deal with the demo calcs. Why don't you help the guys get set up on whatever? And he asked if I would not tell anybody that happened. And I was like, nope. I'm going to go tell somebody about it as soon as the sergeant's back, like I got to. It's a safety issue.
Yeah, for sure.
But something similar, just of like, there was something off about the interaction that he had that I just saw from the back. And I had to intervene right there because it was a safety issue, right?
Okay, but so, dude,
Hit me.
I'm not
What
just
do you
like
got? No,
randomly
by all means,
bored
jump
and,
in. Yeah.
and asking dumb questions.
I wanna
just 'cause I'm trying
hit
to
'em.
fill
What do you got?
time. I'd already like started thinking about all of these things, and my question to you is, when you saw him off to the side and you thought, something doesn't feel right. You'd already felt something wasn't right.
Yep.
You'd felt something wasn't right before you handed him that not right. You were handing him, we'll call it explosives, with a unconfirmed gut feel that was bubbling around, which was then going to make you apply your attention a couple of minutes later. Like, you probably knew something was off before you handed him the bomb,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I would say that's correct.
So, and it's, of course, none of this is your fault. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but I'm going to ask the question, why did you ignore the signal?
Thinking back on it, I assumed that due to him being senior in rank,
It's usually the case.
that he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, the assumption.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
that
the
was
assumption of authority or the assumption of rank, not the assumption of competency.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a senior. He was senior in time as well. Like this is for those
You've
that
already
don't know.
established
Yeah,
that he was a dude that needed a careful eye,
Yes.
irrespective of whatever.
Yeah,
So if you've been on the job a million years, but you need close, direct supervision, it's effectively the same as you've been on the job 1 year, you know?
yeah. No, that's true. And at the time, especially where we were, we'd all just got back from Afghanistan. So again, there was an assumption of competence. Like we all should know how to do this stuff. It's a pretty basic setup for explosive work. I mean, you know this for anybody that doesn't know. Basic time fuse calcs are one of the first things you learn in demolition training. So like is how to run time fuse. And it has nothing to do with explosives. It's just a burning
true.
match. And
It's pretty much the first thing I learned.
pretty simple, So for me to question the Master Corporal in that moment of handing him time fuse, it didn't seem like the right thing to do at the time. It was once I started, and yeah,
Namaste, we're there. So here's probably something for you to consider, as well as many others. So he went overseas with you.
yep.
He came back with you.
Mm-hmm.
And how did he process all of that? / at what phase was he in immense brain fog? At what point had anyone started considering these things? At what point had anyone considered that, maybe he was talented and qualified and semi-squared away and knew his stuff, and he went overseas and he did a pretty good job, and then he came back, and then for whatever reason, it seemed like he kept making dumb decisions and being confused and staring off into the sky and not sure what he's doing and trying to be self-protective and can you please not tell the sergeant? And, it's a pretty easy pattern to see.
for sure. And
But
this
no
is
one
the
was
thing.
thinking like that back then.
So prior to the tour, he was already in that mindset. Like people already knew he was like that
He'd
prior
already
to
been
tour.
flagged.
And so the tour, I don't think affected him that much. And I don't want to call it too much because I don't want to throw this guy under the bus.
Yeah,
but
right.
he already required supervision ahead of time. And when he got promoted, it was later than his peers. And this was like, we need to get this guy on task. We need to somehow get this guy up to par.
Yeah.
And so, like, he should, as a master corporal, he shouldn't have been the one doing the time fuse. He should have delegated that to a sapper.
Yeah, that's
right?
right.
So there was a lot of things that shouldn't have happened in that sequence that did.
Well, it sounds like he was just making compromised decisions.
And it was. I think there was a lot of compromising decision making long before the tour, though. I don't think it was the tour that made it worse. It was just,
All right, now I don't want to dig too much deeper because I don't want to start like ratting anyone out. 'Cause I don't know any of these characters, and you know, I don't know how well the story is known. But like, so when the sergeant showed up, what went down?
So this was the other part. The sergeant wasn't great either, but I went up to him and I was just like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know this is what happened. Master Corporal so-and-so was cutting deck cord instead of time fuse as to doing the calcs." I explained the story to him and he was just like, "Did anything happen?" And I was like, "Nope, I intervened and I took over." And he's like, "Did any of the sappers see it?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "All right, never mind then." And off he went.
Oh wow.
And that was the last we heard of it.
Oh wow.
And so I was just like, and again, earlier to what you were saying, to what we were saying about me losing faith in the leadership of 1CR, that was a big part of it. Was things like that would happen where it would just be like, slide it off to the side, no big deal, and nothing would ever come of it. Even though like stuff should have come of it, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, you know, moving the safety issue off to the side for a moment. I mean, there's just so many cascading issues there that have ripple-on effect from individual to individual and institution to institution. It's just like it's a shame.
Yep, it is a shame. Couple comments I want to touch on real quick. B Jordan 729, good to see you, buddy. He says, "I framed patterns when I was working as batting average. Nobody's going to hit a home run every day, but was a coworker batting average slipping, in which case definitely was called out." That's a good way to look at it. You know, you can't bat 1,000, but if your average starts to slide, then it should be engaged. Absolutely. Dom Duke jumps in and says, "As an instructor in a police..."
Of course. Hang on a sec.
Yeah,
it's right. Universally, I already stated, like, I'll make universal statements, but that doesn't mean it's like applicable to every single person. Yeah, your average might slide, and that might be a pretty good metric of the batting average, but it doesn't take into account that the person whose average was sitting here that just slipped, it's because he took on a whole bunch of new responsibilities. Now he's the assistant frickin' whatever on the baseball team. You know, it's just, it's hard to use simple metrics like that. And I know B Jordan isn't using it that simply, but simple metrics aren't granular enough to form a cohesive pattern. It's just a data point. It's almost like an n=1 data point, which is not a pattern per se.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense in that the overall feel or the overall skill set or whatever it is they're doing. I think to your point earlier, that's when you would engage it, right? It's not that you're going to come over there and start jacking people up about, "Hey man, you need to sort your stuff out, blah, 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 blah." It's, "Hey man, I noticed that you're you're sliding. What's going on?" That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And absolutely, we should be looking at a holistic view of people rather than
for sure.
singular. Dom Duke jumped in here.
It's the reason. Again, I know B Jordan knows this. It's not like I'm calling him out. I'm just using it as an opportunity to make the point for people who listen to this later. Like, it's literally what most of the internet does right now. It's a surface level assessment with a knee-jerk response that then dictates the next move into the next surface level decision. There's very little deep critical thinking to analyze the complexity of the pattern. The pattern is a 1-point data point. That ain't a pattern, but that's what everyone's using as a pattern out there. It just, things are moving so fast because of the less deep thought, I believe.
Yeah. You know what? There's an image that clicked into my head when you were talking about that.
Just give me a sec.
Oh,
I don't know if I got a sign for a Purelator package.
okay. By
Okay,
all means, if you got to run, by all-
I don't know if I do or not. I'm going to keep an eye on things. All right.
the image that popped in my head was templates, like range templates. You know, when you
Yeah,
have
right,
multiple and you have all the those little poly sheets on top of each other that
Oh, yeah.
lay it on top. But
I got a few off my Junior Generals kit right now that
Yeah.
I could pull out.
and so when you look at those overall, when you see all the templates over top of the map, you can see the whole pattern. But if you were just look at one of those templates, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. And even if one of those lines was erased, you're not really getting a full view of the problem, which is what I'm taking from this, is that you have to see the whole template. You gotta like flip all the pages down. Then
You do. So there's a couple of things there. You've got to see the full template to understand actually what's going on, but also for the understanding of the cohesiveness of things. And so, like, if you throw a template down for Carl Gustav or Carl G, and then you throw a C6 template on top of that, and then you throw a whatever template on top of that, now you've got like a 10 stack template. That shows you the cohesiveness, the interlocking arcs of fire, the mutually supportive blah, blah, blah. And so without layers to your pattern, you don't see the cohesiveness of what is actually going on.
the interplay, even how those things work together, I love it. Catherine Hirschfeld jumped in and says, "Amen, Shaun. We need more critical thinking." 100%. A lot of people do. I know I do, especially.
I do. Yeah.
Dan C says, "Chance, you're so right. I've had to politely remove senior management from the line while disarming and unloading their FA. Unfortunately, organizational culture has an effect on those situations. Absolutely. I've done the similar. I had to throw somebody off a range, actually, that was very senior because they were doing some very distinct safety infractions." And then Dom Duke says, "As an instructor in a police department, the supervising team lacked leadership big time. Was about to quit the unit when I realized my purpose was being there for the trainees and not the unit supervisors. Knowing my why at work, enjoying every moment since." Which absolutely,
Yeah,
if you can,
that is super key. I mean, I think that not I was going to say a lot of people. I think some people identify their next bound, their next level of leadership that they want to aspire to, or where they actually ultimately want to be in the organization. They'll see that and they'll look for, is that what I want to be? And generally speaking, if where you want to be is senior in an organization, that senior has probably been in the game maybe a couple of decades. And in that couple of decades, they might have learned some patterns that aren't healthy. And so you're looking at your unhealthy pattern future. And I think that, if you can lose your way if you see where you want to be, but where you want to be doesn't look healthy. So you've got to focus on where you're at healthily and try to serve those around you. And I believe that in serving healthily in the present, it'll put you in that future in a healthy way. But looking forward or casting your view 10, 15 years down the road and seeing not great leadership, it can be almost disillusioning. It can almost be like self-defeating to look for the critical problems at the senior level and say, well, I don't want to be part of that because look at them, And I know that's not what Dom is saying, of course. But all I'm doing is reiterating that what he's doing is good. It's healthy. Focus on where you're at, your why right now. Wherever level you're at is the right level at this moment if you're doing it well.
yeah. And to that point, I think this is another thing to look at is as a junior leader, if you are looking upwards at your leadership and thinking that either they don't know what they're doing or perhaps that you know better, you need to take a second and understand that you don't work there. You don't know what the job actually entails. You don't know the sequences. You don't know the people they're dealing with. You have really very little idea. And this was a thing going around when I was still in, that if you hand all the problems to corporals in the army, like we could solve all the problems of the military in a second. But when you stop and think about it, like we don't know anything about the army, how it works, how it runs, what the logistics are, any of that stuff. So to just assume that you know better it's not an accurate assumption. to jump
No,
into.
but you know, the spirit of this the statement, just give it to a corporal and they'll sort it out. The spirit of the message is to some degree true.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well,
Because corporals are the guys that get stuff done.
so what corporals represent, I believe, almost universally, as long as they're a good corporal, is someone who's been in the game long enough to know how to do pretty much anything,
Yep.
and they don't have rank, and therefore they're not distracted by it. That's what corporals always represented to me. I was one.
Yep.
I like being a corporal, man. It meant that you had some tenure to some degree. I mean, you've got 4 years in, and if you're in a hard charging unit, it means something as a corporal. And so as a corporal, I felt like it's not like I was squared away, but I was pretty good to go at 4 years in. And I wasn't focused on rank. And so like my responsibility was just to kick that ass. And if someone came to me with like corporalish questions, pretty much guaranteed I had an answer at a corporal level.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I had to know like the politics of the matter. I didn't need to know a whole bunch of things that I felt was all just like white noise. I got to focus on like, oh, let's go as a corporal, and I quite liked it.
I did like being a corporal. It was the one thing that I didn't like about being a corporal was the fact that the crap always rolls downhill. So if somebody above you screwed up or someone below you screwed up, you were always the filter point. Everything would kind of come together.
Maybe in some organizations, but that it didn't work that way for me, because when I was a corporal, I was in Pathfinder platoon.
Oh yeah,
And so
got hard chargers surrounding.
the way that statement that you said was the polar opposite of how we operated, because it didn't matter what happened. Like my deck commander or my detachment commander, 4 of us working together, I was his det 2IC. So his first name was Tony. I was his 2IC, and then we had 2 privates in our detachment. And so if I screwed something up as nav or whatever, it was on Tony. Tony took the heat, and Tony was always the first one to state, patrol commander has responsibility. And I learned that in my Pathfinder course. I'm the only one responsible for the mistakes in this matter, in this patrol. If I'm the patrol commander, I'll take the heat. Even if it wasn't under my control, I'll take the responsibility, and then I'll figure it out later.
Yep.
But I'm not going to let anyone swing. I'll swing them myself, but I'll swing before they do. And so, that's how I was brought up in Pathfinder platoon. Was patrol commander is responsible for it all.
This is where the dissonance I had when I was in the military was that everyone said that up until it was time for someone to swing, and then and then it was always the corporal that swung, because
that's just
a unit.
The opposite.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dan C jumps in here and says, yes, yes, yes. But to this point, what the people that I saw that did it right within not only just the military, but outside the military in life, were the people that you're talking about that would just, it's my responsibility. I'm the one that is in charge here. I'm the one that is here to get the job done. Therefore, it is my responsibility. And that works down the chain of command, right? So you as a corporal, I'm sure you took on a lot as your personal responsibility.
Yeah, for sure.
And then as that being put onto the privates, they would take on their personal responsibility. And if everybody does that, then the mission either it doesn't succeed or fail on that, but the mission's a lot easier to manage.
Well, it's a self-replicating outcome. So, like, if I do it right, the guys who work for me do it right, and I do it right for the guy that I work for. And like once that whole logic chain starts syncing up or synchronizing into a fluid forward momentum, good things happen, man. And so, but if it's janky, if you've got some dude who's 2/3 into the logic chain or the momentum chain, if he's 2/3 down it and he's the janky link, man, you're going to get blow torched out, or you're going to get doused in oil, but there'll be no more jank because the team has to start flowing. And so, pretty quickly, whoever the janky link is going to get identified and get sorted out one way or another, because the team can't suffer for someone who is, torching the synchronization.
That's the truth. And just before I carry on this, I want to let you guys know, anybody that's watching, by all means, hit us up with your questions or thoughts or anything like that. Put them in the comments. We can engage them right now while we're at it. To this point, I have a question on that system. So you coming up through the 80s, do you think that this is, at least the way I see it now, we were so focused through my period of time, the 2000s and into the 2010s, we were so focused on Afghanistan that we neglected a lot of the other stuff within the CM. So like general leadership and development, and we were more concerned about putting bodies in seats than we were about making sure that those bodies were solid troops. And I saw that across the board in a lot of different units. Do you think that the fact that we were fighting there, or we went there almost unprepared, versus when you were in, you guys were kind of always ready for the fight, but the fight never happened? Does that make sense? Does that track for you?
It does to some degree, but what I do want to say is I can't, it's hard for me to make comment on this tour or that tour over in Afghanistan, because of course I didn't do tours over there. And so like my understanding of all of that, it would just be guesswork. I'm like an armchair quarterback effectively. But what I want to believe is based the units that I was involved in, I say I want to believe, I know it to be true that it wasn't regular approaches to how to do the job well. And so now we're talking, as I look at your question, you're phrasing it to me as the regular army, and I know that's a super lame term, but the regular army was doing regular army stuff and then trying to figure it out over there. And they had so much to figure out that they stopped focusing on regular army stuff. And so it's a problem, of course. But because I wasn't there, I don't know how I would have done it better as a regular army guy. So let's say I'm now a sergeant in the PPCLI, which I'm not saying is regular, it's just a different role and from yours and from someone else down the street. And so if we're not going to be, if we're so busy loading magazines and doing all of the warfighting stuff, that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities to use all of that as leadership lessons. I mean, leadership is woven through everything. I can teach someone more about leadership in my kitchen while I'm teaching them how to make coffee than a weekend-long symposium on leadership. If the person is open-minded, receptive to me, because like I might have all the wisdom and knowledge on how to make a good coffee, well, enough wisdom for them. But if they show up and they're like in a mood, or they've got attitude, or they didn't sleep, or they've got brain fog, or whatever, man. Like if they show up the wrong person, then like it's a missed opportunity for them. And for sure, I'm going to feel the vibe, and I ain't going to be passing on the leadership lessons in the moment. I'm just going to have them load magazines. And so depending on the circumstance, you can always teach leadership if the person is receptive to the moment.
This is good information. I'm
What do you
digging this a lot.
think?
Well, I think I'm going to hit this real quick and then I'm going to tell you what I
Okay,
think. Dancy says, I'm pretty sure my name was still in permanent on the Coxswain's Owe Me board, but I always stood by my actions. Yeah, I've been there. Not so much with the Coxswain because we don't have those in the Army, but the SQ did not like me sometimes. Let me put it that way.
Dude, I'm good at push-ups in my 60s.
Yeah.
Because I did a lot of push-ups when I was in my early Army phase.
Yes, indeed. And so I think you're absolutely right. And that leadership lessons can be passed on through any of those things. And it's not always so much if the, let's say the junior is receptive to the moment, because I think a lot of times the senior,
Sure.
the person that's supposed to be passing that on has so much on their plate that they just can't
Right.
see
It's a
those
two-way
moments.
highway, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like I don't want to, I can't make any comments about anyone overseas, whether they did a good job or not if I wasn't there. I just don't know. But what what I've heard, what I've read, is that, the focus became so hyper focused on war fighting that the there was a narrow focus on the daily rather than a broader focus that could have been wrapped around the narrow focus, using the idea of every second is an opportunity to teach something else while you're loading mags.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I guess my question was more on the mindset between like Cold War era versus active war era, and you kind of hit me back at one point. I was saying that I asked the question, what the difference was between being a soldier pre-war, during the war, and post-war, and you had said, well, it's all the same. And I was always a little like, it's not quite the same, because the way in which I was soldiering prior to being overseas and after was different, just based on experience, right? Like, as I gain experience in country, I'm going to soldier differently than I was prior, which is going to change how I do afterwards, right? So I think that's more where my question was, on the mindset of Cold War eras, which were always ready for, like, we're going to go anytime. It's coming. The Russians are going to come over the hill. Now we're going to go get them. Versus when we were in Afghanistan, it was just like, oh my God, we're so far behind, and like trying to cobble together things is what it felt like for me. And I don't know the senior levels, but that was more my thought pattern, is that just having that readiness aspect versus having to test that readiness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that I understand the point that you're making, and your point is valid. But it's now you're making it valid at a granular level when I say this next piece. The contrast is that you're describing a Cold War army that I was part of, and then I also wasn't part of. The the regular army, Cold War army, was doing its best to prepare, I feel, based on limited resources and a fixed template. So there wasn't a lot of pressure testing, I'll call it. And so the template had existed for several years, and the template didn't change. And so there was no need to change the template, because when the template works well, life is easy. And so that never really worked for my mind. And so I did do a lot of push-ups in my youth. And so when I went into special operations, that's a completely different attitude and mindset and resource-based environment. And so the pressure testing is constant. And so the war effectively is every day then. You have enough resources, enough imagination and curiosity to take a template and turn it into a black hole and see what comes out the other end. And that in and of itself has a certain kinetic energy to it, a certain like velocity that I feel applies to anything really.
Yeah.
And so the spirit of your question is good. It's just that didn't fully apply to my entire career.
No, that makes sense. I got a question here. Satch in Motion jumped in here and said, if an individual isn't receptive to the moment, are there ways to create an environment so that the person may be receptive?
Yeah, sure. I 100% know there is. But, it's just, let me do two contrasts or two different scenarios. So it's very dependent on the situation, the individual, the expected outcome, the reason for the outcome as a priority. So let's say someone steps up in front of me and they're disinterested, distracted, they're on their phone. I probably won't even start the conversation with them. And so there's one contrast. But then the other contrast is the person shows up in front of me and they're a bit distracted. They're not as receptive, but I have 60 seconds to convince them that they're going to pay attention to what I say, because the fate of the planet rests on it. So there's two different things. One you can ignore, one you have to make work, whether they're receptive or not. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter what stands in front of you. There's always a way to make it work if the priority is right, if the importance is enough, if you have enough time. Even if it's super time compressed down to less than 60 seconds, you can start to convince someone of ways to do it better to the moment. But, it's very dependent on the situation. There is no one answer.
And I would imagine the leader as well, right? Like as a junior master corporal, I did not have the skill set or the experience to create this moment, right? To make it so that the person may be receptive. But with enough practice, with some time and some focus on my point, I could eventually create a receptive environment with that person with some time.
But,
and
if
some
the
effort.
other person shows up and they've got no sense of responsibility to the planet, to their team, to themselves, you've got less than 60 seconds to make them create the solution that's going to save the planet. That's a freaking hard situation to manage, man, irrespective of how much talent a leader has. And so I'm just going to say it bluntly, if there's less than 60 seconds to save the planet and that person isn't receptive, I'll make them receptive.
That's
It
where
won't be a point of like, how do I outwit this person intellectually? How do I cajole them? How do I Jedi mind trick them? With less than 60 seconds to save the planet, I will make them. And that might not involve words. So,
there might be a knife hand involved in some
right.
places.
And so blunt. So we're talking about time sensitivity, the priority of the moment, save the planet, or frickin' tie your shoelaces. Like these priorities, they drive a lot of the intensity of the engagement of the moment.
That's a good point. And the I guess the side note of that as well is that that's what makes the authoritarianism of military work, right? Like when there's no time and the sergeant says move, you move.
Yeah, it's true.
That's it. That's because a lot of the situations we get into, there is no time and you just have to react and go.
But conversely,
yeah.
You can have a sergeant who just steps out and it's already being done because everyone realizes what it's all about and everyone is in the game. And so the more in the game you are, or the higher up you go in the game, there's just less talk and more do.
The understanding of expectations, I think, is a key because I've had leaders who were, for instance, as another example, we were doing on an exercise. We used to, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but we used to have a competition against the other, troop versus troop, squadron versus squadron, that kind of stuff, right? And I'm sure you guys do it in the infantry as well. And it's just you go from stand to stand to stand, testing skills, and it's all time compressed. You don't have a lot of sleep, all that stuff. Sapper stakes, there we go. That's what it's called.
Yeah. There it is.
And with a particular sergeant we had this situation with the explosives that didn't turn out well, right? And then with another guy, a friend of mine, he's a master corporal, but him and I sat down before we even left for exercise and said, okay, here's the responsibilities. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And we would break it down. So he told me exactly what he expected of me as his 2IC. So I knew, so that when we hit the field, we knew exactly what was going to happen. So we rolled up with our sled. He would go off for orders. I would get the tent up. I'd get everybody ready. We'd have food boiling already. So he'd come back. He'd give orders. He'd be able to engage us with stuff. And then he'd be able to eat while we got to work. And then so on and so forth. And him and I had this really great flow to it, but it was because our expectations were preset. We had already laid it all out. And that level of communication was key, so that when there was a point where I was having issues with my shoulder, and the troop stepped in and was able to get the job done, even though I was injured. So that level of communication and managerial skills comes through, or enabled us to do really well as a team, as a unit. Whereas previously in that other section that I was in, there was no expectations, no direction. It was just do what the sergeant tells you when he tells you to do it, if that makes sense. So that
It does.
presetting of information is important. I wanted to put that point in.
It is. Well, I'll reiterate that. And I think it's really important for any young person to pick up this idea that you just relayed, and I'm going to reinforce. You only need to do it a handful of times. You only need to be in a crew that's super squared away a handful of times. Pathfinder patrol orders typically take about 2 hours to deliver as a patrol commander. So you're sitting there for 2 hours listening to everything about your shoulder. What happens if Chance Burles' shoulder gets injured and his other shoulder gets injured and we have to grow a third shoulder? That's part of the orders. You know what I'm saying? It's detailed. You go through a few of those and you start looking at the world differently in the sense of preparation and planning. As a young private, P&P, you don't know much at all, but you have to create and deliver 2 hours of patrol orders. Now you have a different sense of P&P. And so that's how the world is. If you can get into some groups that expose you to the best in class of a process, if you can do that process a few times with them and then move along, you're set up for life. You can then engage that in anything in life. And so, to your point, between you and your partner there, you guys were cobbling together your ideas, and maybe you spent 4 days cobbling those ideas together. It doesn't matter how long it took, and it doesn't matter how long your ideas coalesced into. Chances are it probably was in a set of Pathfinder patrol orders. And I think that every soldier should have to experience a set of Pathfinder patrol orders so that they have context as to how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I would also say, inversely, every Pathfinder should have to go to a Sapper set of orders that is their Pathfinder version of Sapperism. And so I get to sit down and listen to the nerderific detail that I've never heard before in a set of Pathfinder orders. And that is the way of life. The more subject matter expertise rooms you can put yourself into to see how deep that rabbit hole goes continuously opens your eyes to you've not gone deep enough in anything. And so it is all context, I feel.
Yeah. And I got another example of this. We're going into all the stories from me today. I was in...
Make it a good one, okay, this time.
Okay. So I was in the intelligence cell. And within the engineers, we have our own intelligence cell. So we always have an engineer looking at that information, because an intelligence guy isn't going to know the difference between C4 or Semtex or blah, 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 right? So while I was in the intelligence cell, I got tasked during an exercise to create an intelligence brief for the regiment. And as a young corporal, I'd never given an intelligence brief before. And I had to reach out to a lot of the senior leadership, the captains, the majors, even the colonel as well. And I'm like, okay, what are you guys looking for? What is the information that I need to get across?
There was no template at this point, or?
This was the warrant that was in charge of me thought it was a great learning opportunity, and he did not provide me a template. So he just said, give an int brief. And I was like, roger that.
But hang on a sec. You said roger that, and that was it? Come on.
No, I asked him a bunch of questions, and he said,
okay,
go,
so you can't
go
just say
seek out.
roger that, and then all of a sudden Chance Burles broke out his beautiful mind, a chalkboard and some chalk, and figured it all out.
He told
Hang
me
on
to
a
go.
sec.
He told me to go ask questions.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, and that's
Just
where I
ask
started.
questions, or did he direct you towards resources?
He did not direct me to
Hams,
resources.
no PAMs, no templates, no nothing. He gave you nothing. He just said, go ask questions.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask him further questions of that simple question?
I didn't get an opportunity because he said, see you later. Like it was a very quick.
So you already
Bam, 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 bam.
stated it earlier. It is a two-way highway.
100%. I did not
You
do
did
my
not.
side of the
Right.
equation on
And
this one.
I'm not trying to lay blame at your feet right now. I'm trying to make sure that everyone understands that there is a sequence of events. And when there's a failure in a sequence of events, It's not just like that dude.
Right. Yeah. It goes and it falls down the line too.
Yes,
100%.
indeed,
It rolls downhill, as I was saying
does.
earlier. During this, what I wanted to get across with this was the fact that an intelligence brief to a regiment is an hour to an hour and a half, and it covers everything. For anybody that doesn't know a set of orders, it can be quite detailed, to say the least. And you have to come up with all the information. This was a fictional thing, so I had to come up with who the enemy was, where they came from, what their motivation was, all the stuff for this brief. And then I gave it to the regiment, the command team, and did all that stuff. And then I had another warrant pull me aside. I was like, okay, so good brief, but here's where you could improve. And gave me the list of things that I could do better. Some of those were, this isn't required in an intelligence brief. Some of them were, this is required in an intelligence brief that you didn't have in there.
Had you never attended an intelligence brief before?
Not of that level, no. I was a brand new
you'd
corporal.
never been in a proper int brief, and all of a
Correct.
sudden you're
Giving one.
putting on your Willy Wonka imagination hat and briefing the regiment.
Yes.
Oh, how embarrassing!
Yeah, and
For
I had
involved.
about
Everyone
a week.
involved.
Yeah, I had a week to
Embarrassing.
prepare, so I got it sorted, and it turned out to be a okay brief. Again, this goes back to the whole thing about the regiment not really pre-planning
What a
anything.
poor
So
example. It's a good example that you've raised. It's a poor example of how things are
of
done.
how to do it, 100%. The key to that I wanted to touch on was the fact that it gave me the experience and the understanding of what actually is required in all of those briefings.
You're still
So-
feeling it, aren't you?
No?
Yeah, you are. You are. And I've said this to you before because you keep raising this story. I've heard this story.
Yeah, it's a great
few
story.
Times.
It's a great story.
It's a great story. I got
It
no
is.
issues with the story.
Well, there's lots of
But
points
you
that I
still
can bring.
feel it.
I don't feel it that much.
Yeah, you do.
No. The point that I wanted to make, that I want to get across.
Yeah, it's totally sterile story. Yeah, there's no emotions involved in it at all.
The point of this is the fact that until you gain the experience, until you've done it, until you've actually, because we could sit here right now and we could brief out a SMESC set of orders, and anybody that's listening to this would not really understand what it was. But until you sit in on a set of orders, until you actually physically are there and having to take notes and having to ask questions and then get put in that position to then do it, you just don't know. You can have theoretical knowledge, but it comes back to practical application of that knowledge, which is the important part. That's how we get better at things rather than just say we know it and like, oh yeah, sweet, I've done a set of orders before. I've never done a set of Pathfinder orders. I have no idea what that's like. No matter how much you tell me
You
what
still
that's
haven't
like.
done an int set of orders either.
I
by the
have,
way.
actually. Thank you very much.
Sorry?
I have.
How many times?
Many times.
Oh, okay. So you did it enough times that you got to improve your disaster.
Yes. Because that was the first brief that I had ever given.
Right.
And that's why it's so prevalent in my head, was that it was such a disaster that I am perfectly emotionally capable of managing.
I mean, you're still not connected to that at all. No, that's just like
Not at all.
guesswork.
Such emotion jumped in and said, it's a great story. I've never heard it before. There you go. See? And then Julia Shelley jumps in here. Julia, good to see you. Says, I miss Shaun's heckling. He's good at it. And then Catherine jumps in and said, the story sounds familiar even in the field of education. Admin makes the most elaborate building evacuation plans in case of a tsunami. But in my mind, I made my own practical plan. Amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is true.
This happens a lot, and I've heard of it from when I was in Olds College. They did the same thing. We're going to do an active shooter drill.
Oh, yeah.
And then they barely put any work into it. Like the people who are organizing it put lots of work into it. The people that were involved in it throughout the school put less effort into it because there was no real why to it. Dan C. jumped in here. He says, I have to push back a little. I believe managerial skills can be passed on, but leadership is a learned skill through actively observing a proven leader and continuous reevaluation of your core values.
Yeah, I've got no problems with that. I don't know what he's pushing back against. Maybe
I think that was from earlier. So while we were talking about leadership and stuff. And then we got, where are we here? Sorry. The Blackwater Technical Diving states, we got
Keep
lots.
the comments coming in, troops. Look at how jazz hands Chancy Boy is. He might be able to get over his first set of orders trauma if you keep it up.
Blackwater Technical Diving says, slates, checklists, keep it organized, 100%. Dom Duke says, good, gotta go, nice chatting with you guys, take care. Greyman Project Brady says, hello, if you send me a link, I might be able to jump on. I could throw him on right now if we really wanted to.
Bring him on. What the hell?
All right, let me send you a link, Brady. Give me a minute.
Why didn't you see this? Why didn't you predict this occurring?
Well, I gotta say, I don't know. There's a lot going on in my head right now, so
more in orders for you.
More orders, here it comes. This is what it's all about. But while I send off this invite to Brady to get him on the show here, I do have a question for you.
Shoot.
In regards to this concept, we're talking about, like leadership and development as well as experience and all this stuff. How do we apply this military style information to the everyday life?
Right. You know what? That's a great question. And while you're sending all of the links, Tappy McTappin, I'll do my best to ramble on here for the 60 seconds that you need.
Good. Ramble away.
This is kind of not a coincidence, but a couple of days ago, I put up a video and I was doing some speed work. I was 90 degrees to the heavy bag, and I turned and zapped it with a jab cross in super slow-mo and then tried to catch a ball in midair. The catching of the ball was secondary or tertiary to the task at hand. The primary task was speed work, which was 90-degree turn and engage. And generally speaking, when I do that, I'm well under a second for engagement. If I'm moving fast, I can do it in about a half second from a 90-degree turn, which is quite fast. But my point is this. The reason I do that, and my point in the post was, the reason I do that is because without measurement, without metrics, without standards, it's all just guesswork. And I've been applying standard testing against myself for about 40 years. And so I know when I'm fast and I know when I'm slow and I know what my baselines are and I know what I should be expecting in all of these moments because I constantly test. So Sergeant Hazard, buddy, let me just finish this story and then we'll launch into it. Sergeant Hazard on my Instagram account had hit me up in a comment and said, "Hey, Shaun, that's fun, but do you know, is there a way for you to be able to incorporate that into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?" And so I threw in some ideas. I should have added you, Chancy Boy, so that you could jump into the comments on that. So I gave him some scenarios, and I'm not going to paint those out right now, but my point is this. All of the theories in the world, all of the ideas, they're great. And if I pass on all the ideas to the individual who asked me the question, as this is what you should do, none of it is worth a damn unless he goes and puts it to action. I can explain the secrets of the universe, but he's still got to go stand in front of a heavy bag, hit the stopwatch, and go. And do it. And test. And evaluate. And then do it better the next time. And so I feel that that's the biggest downfall right now is a lot of talk, but no confirmation of the words they just talked about or read about or thought about. It's all requiring of action.
Yeah. It's real easy to nod your head and say, yeah, this is cool. But until you actually do it. Is that enough
rambling for you to bring Brady in? So that
I can. Yeah, I'm going to bring him in right here. Right. Brady, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, guys. How are you? I'll tell you what. You are entering the world of my ADHD mind. I am the good idea fairy. I have all brilliant ideas. Fucking genius ideas. Pardon me. Sorry, I forgot. This is a non-swearing podcast.
That's right.
I have brilliant, genius ideas, but my execution is suboptimal. Terrible. And I will start something. I will begin something. In fact, I was just starting something now. I was eating. I'm cleaning the loft, my little man space here in my cabin. And then I saw you guys jump on because I need background therapy noise. I have the emotional, background noise, emotional therapy background noise. And you guys are a wonderful podcast to have on the background while I clean. And then I was like, it's been a while since it's been on. And to be fair, Big Bird, you sent me a calendar invite for the 3rd of October to be on the podcast. And I did not confirm because I have room temperature IQ and a memory that of a goldfish. But I'm glad I'm here with you guys right now.
All good. This is the fun part about this. Yeah, there's been a number of people that I've put calendars out to, and unfortunately, a lot of times it gets missed or it drops in the bubble line of your Instagram Messenger, right? That happens sometimes. It gets down 10, 12, 15 Messenger, and then it just disappears. I totally get it. And don't worry, we're going to get you back on another time for a full episode, not just for the half episode. I'm excited to have you back on here. It's going to be good.
I want to throw this in your direction, Brady, because you're a bit like myself. You're a bit self-deprecating. You're talking about your memory. You're talking about et cetera. And like, yeah, I could say all of those same things myself. I feel the same way as well. And whether I believe it to be true or not actually isn't that important because it's easily defeated by just frickin' pressure testing it. My thoughts. Okay, let's see if my thoughts turn into something. My whatever, anything that comes into my head, I like to make it happen rather than just observe it. And I know you're very capable of that as well. I've been in the past, I've been in my own little attic where I have been listening to ideas in my head and I've done 1,000 things that day that didn't turn into much at all other than me chasing my ideas. I think it's okay to do that, but not on a continuous basis. I think it's again what we were just talking about, Chance, is that context of chasing ideas and expecting them to go nowhere. And then the next day, simply locking on the first idea and making it a reality. Those two contextual positions are then allow you to like play in the space between the two and not feel overly like guilty or hard on yourself or, like you don't have a solution. Lots of times I've felt like I don't even know what I'm doing in this moment, but usually a bit of action teaches me the solution.
Action, even in the wrong direction, is better than stagnation. I think we
Yeah,
learned that
sure.
in the military. I mean, that's what we were always taught. Like, you get into an ambush, and I think that's what life is, and I think that's what our brains are, is like an ambush. And what do they say you do in an ambush? You keep pushing through. You fight through the ambush until you're able to reorganize and put rounds on target. And I think that's what action is rounds on target, pushing through that ambush. And I think our brains are a consistent ambushing point for our intentions. We can have all the intentions in the world, but our minds are that one, threat that pops out at us and goes, do you think you can do this? I mean, you got other things you can do. You know what? You should do this, and this would be great, but here's some guilt about you doing it because you should be doing something else. And then because you feel guilty because you should be doing something else, guess what you don't do? A damn thing, because now you don't want to do that other thing and you don't want to do this thing that would elicit that dopamine response. And I think it's more of an ADHD thing. And I'll tell you, and I don't mean to change subjects, but we are bordering on that precipice of talking about ADHD. So I'll just go ahead and push the tip through is that I'm having a theory, and I was talking about my wife this morning. I was wondering if folks in the military either acquire symptoms of ADHD through military training, boot camp, and just our experience in the military, or if it is people who have ADHD that are more drawn to joining in the military. Both you guys are tier awesome operators and have done some cool things up there in Canada, despite being in Canada. No, I'm kidding. But I've always wondered about that, and I always kind of wondered because I don't know if you guys have ADHD or experience ADHD or study much about it, but it has some really awesome benefits to it that I think makes us awesome in the military. It's like and people attribute it to like some ancient gene carried forward as hunter gatherers because we needed to be able to pay attention to our environment in multiple ways, both physiologically, visually, with our sensory cortex, and adapt to ever-changing environment, which is easy for us with ADHD. But it has its disadvantages, and I'll tell you, I learned that the other day when I was off my ADHD med for one day, and I tell you, I was an absolute crap show because I was off of it. And then the next day I was back on it, and I changed my prescription from actual Adderall to a thing called Vyvanse, which is a cleaner feeling, easier going type of ADHD medication, which I'm enjoying. And I notice I feel a lot better on it as well. But I'm able to refocus and reacquire and be really good at things. Like my new hobby now is taking apart my Xterra and putting new components and wiring in there like a crackhead looking for copper. So
So I have a thought on this, and I want to jump in on this because I think you have a point here in the fact that the military does kind of prep you for. I'm not going to say ADHD, but like it preps you to be able to absorb information for sure, especially within the combat arms. But I think the real challenge here is there's a lot of time spent in the military doing nothing. Like you're sitting there waiting for transport, or you're sitting there hanging out, which kind of alludes itself to the problem as well. But Shaun, what are your thoughts on this? I want to hear what you got to say.
I've never been formally diagnosed with it, but I bet I got some of it, whatever it is. I've probably got a few things. I've got some acronyms hanging out in me that make me me. So if I got like 7 out of 10 ADHD or 97 out of 10, it just doesn't matter to me, honestly. Whatever I've got, I've got. And I am what I am. And that ain't a lame excuse to I'm stuck or static. I am what I am and I'll never change. I am what I am right now. And whatever I am right now, I like to play with it. I like to use it. I like to wield it, is the term that is in my mind. And so, I've got wicked imposter syndrome. And so it's like my Excalibur, you know? Funnily enough, if you don't mind my little ADHD mind playing with the moment, just yesterday I took a photo of my coffee mug. It's just sitting up here. It's like a beer stein. It's just glass. And on the front of the stein is a JTF2 crest. And halfway through the mug was coffee. I put it down on my reading table in the living room, and I stood up with my camera to take a photo of it and aligned the ceiling light that was directly above the coffee, just by coincidence, aligned it so that the reflection of the light above was on the surface of the coffee in order to make the dagger on the crest of JTF2 looked like it was rising through the coffee like Excalibur coming out of the lake. Chance, take a look at my Instagram account. Go back a couple of days and you'll see the image. It's the second photo. And quite frankly, I think it's a beautiful photo to my eye because I know the story. I know what I was creating in the moment. My semi-ADHD mind was hyper-fixated on creating Excalibur rising out of the lake, believe it or not. Now people know. But without me saying that, without people understanding why I was hyper-fixated on trying to get that sword tip coming out of the coffee lake, it's a boring photo maybe. Or maybe it's a richer photo now, I don't know.
There you go, right there.
Yeah, next photo.
Next photo.
Click on that.
Okay. Bam. Look at that.
Can you, I don't know if you can expand that at all? Or
Not really,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Anyway, you can kind of see how the sort of logo is coming up out of the lake, hey? If it was a larger image, you'd be able to see it.
The moment you said that, it kind of clicked in my head here of like, you remember the old Monty Python scene, trollops and lakes distributing
right.
swords of no way to distribute governments. And the moment you said it, clicked in my head of that. I really quite like the photo, and I love the reflection. I love the pieces to it. Maybe we'll have to do the vet photo contest will be on coffee next time, or that'd be pretty good.
We still got to figure that out.
The one point I want to ask Brady specifically, you were talking about having ADHD and it being almost a bit of a superpower, and it can be, because you can hyper focus on something and just drill right down to the core of it and get something done, or you can manage multiple things all at once. I found, and I have never been diagnosed, but I know many people who have told me that I probably should have been. And, it does give you the ability to do a lot of things, but as such, it still needs to be managed like anything else. So I look at it similarly in when I go into a depressive episode. I need to manage that episode, and I need to utilize it to the best of my ability. So I'm not going to be great at running a show in those days. I'm still going to do it, but I'm not going to be great at it. But the things that I am going to be great at is hanging out with my boys, just sitting down, being a dad for a moment, right? Versus trying to manage the world or the podcast itself. What do you think on that, Brady?
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful mindset. I think a lot of people would do better if they actually went and got tested for ADHD, because here's the thing. And this is something I'm working on. I've been working on something, a thought that I want to publish, and that is, or maybe a speech or something like that, or a talk, and that is clearing the mental malfunction of the mind, right? We in the military, we learn how to clear a malfunction of a pistol or a rifle, but we don't, and we have user level maintenance information, right? We know how to clear a rifle or how to clear a pistol or how to take it apart, user level maintenance, before we have to take it to a professional. And I always wondered, like, why do we don't have user level maintenance information on the mind and on the brain? And going back to you, Big Bird, is that we are good at a lot of things. We do get hyper focused, and sometimes that hyper focus goes into a dark space, and we hyper focus on that. And that's why we experience such extremes of either, it's almost bipolar by nature. That's why a lot of bipolar people or ADHD people get misdiagnosed as bipolar, because we hyper focus. On both those extremes of positive emotions, and then we get in those extremes of those very dark emotions, because our brain will attach to a dark emotion. We'll have a bad thought, and then we just get going down that dark space. And what I like about what you said there is that you disengage, and then you turn your focus onto something else. What's a positive way? Spending time with your boys, going, you know what? I'm going to detach from all the other things that are not important right now, that my brain wants to hyper focus, and put it on something that means way more to you. And that's focusing on your boys, and getting away from those thoughts. And that's part of acknowledging what's going on with your brain. That's troubleshooting a malfunction within the mind, clearing that malfunction and going, how can I reacquire the target I need? And that is, oh, I'm spending time with my boys. That is a positive um, um, change from that darkness. I don't think a lot of veterans really have figured out. And that's where it comes that we need to pay more attention and start studying at least the basics of our own mind and the physiology that makes up our brain, the chemistry and things like that. Like I said, it goes back to us knowing, I know how to strip apart my Glock. And of course, I was a Glock certified armor, so I got the certification to take it down deeper. But most people, they look at their Glock, they can take it down to the basic four parts: the slide, the barrel, the guide rod, and the frame, right? That is user level maintenance, and we can clean that out. And before we have to take it in for bigger things to a professional. And I wonder, I said, going back to where I think veterans, you guys both say, well, I probably have it. People told me I have it, but I haven't gotten diagnosed. And I wonder how much that might actually change your life when you have a solid, legit confirmation of something going on with you, where you can hyper focus or focus in on that issue and learn how to work with it and learn how to develop that user level maintenance to troubleshoot your mind when it does go down. Same way you would troubleshoot a rifle when it goes down, or troubleshoot a pistol when it goes down. And I find it funny is that we will, any one of us, say that our mind is the greatest weapon that we have, that the guns and knives and the things we have are just tools. It's our mind and our brains that lead to the effectiveness of that. But yet we know more about clearing and troubleshooting our pistols and rifles than we do about our own mind. So what if we did all get diagnosed with ADHD, not for the purpose of clout or, oh, I have ADHD and you.
Oh, I think we lost him. I think we lost him. I'll bring him back on in a second here.
I was hyper focused on what he was saying. My ADHD was like ADHDing.
Right in there, yeah. To this point, I think this is great. Dan C. jumped in here and said, I was formally diagnosed at 53. It didn't change who I am or who I was. It just explains some of the decisions that I've made. It's a great way to look at it. Catherine Hirschfeld, I was also diagnosed with ADD as an adult. For me, I use whatever it is to my benefit and my professional life. I see having ADD as a gift, 100%. Then Julia Shelley jumps in on the Instagram side, says, damn, I seriously signed on to the right episode. I think many people do struggle with some symptoms of ADHD, but if it gets to the point of hijacking your mind and not getting work done, get tested. That's a great point. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I mean, like I already said, I've got a few things, no doubt about it. I've got a few acronyms, and it doesn't bother me in the least. Chance, let me ask you this question. How many times have you heard me say on podcasts, I am probably the biggest fan of quirky people? Not my entire, that's a misstatement. My favorite people are quirky people. My group, my inner core to some degree has quirk in it. If I can be so bold as to say, just as I quickly categorize or catalog my inner circle, not one of them is quote unquote normal. And so what does normal mean, right? Well, normal to me is people who aren't quirky. So if you have quirkiness in you, I consider you as not normal. And then it's what do you do with that not normal? Well, as Brady said, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. And the reality is that you know both. You know when you're doing one or the other. And if you're using it for bad, it's just because you're freaking lazy. Because it's hard work to do it good. It's way easier to do it bad. And I will stand in front of anyone, and they can argue until they're blue in the face with all of their theories. But at the heart of it, we all know it's harder to do it good. And therefore, it's commonly done bad. So if you've got the quirk in you, all you got to do is literally what it says above the screen. Just frickin' do your best with your quirkiness every moment. And the rest takes care of itself, I swear.
So I have a thought on this. And Brady, to answer your question, why don't we do this with the brain when we can do it with a pistol? Well, I can hand you pretty much any semi-automatic pistol and you could probably tear it down. And you could clean it and you'd be good to go. I cannot hand you any other person's brain and have you tear it down and clean it and be good to go. This is all an individual process. So this is the challenge, is that for us, this is a great, I saw a clip online for the last little while. It was like, I don't know what HDs are, but my doctor says I got 80 of them. And I thought that was perfect because that's kind of what you have to do. You have to take a diagnosis, or you have to take a challenge. I mean, Shaun, you did this with PTSD, right? You looked at it and was like, okay, cool. Now I can work on it and then develop it from there. But the challenge is my answer is going to be different than your answer. And his
Here is
answer
a universal answer. Brady already, kind of laid the stage with talking about Glock, about cleaning weapons. Here's the reality. You can have a Glock on your hip as a serving member in the armed forces, and as an example, or law enforcement. It can be on your hip for your entire career, and you may never clean it because you're lazy. And then there will be people who will be cleaning that Glock several times a day because they use it a lot and they know the importance of it working well. And so that is the context. Lazy people will not clean their weapon, even if they're shooting it a lot. But people who understand the importance of a clean weapon are cleaning it all the time, even if it is a bit of work. The work is worth it to create the outcomes that you know are necessary. But, that's humans, man.
it is. Brady, what do you got?
Well, so you touched on a good point there. It was like, yeah, you could hand me a pistol, I'd break it down. But, kind of alluding to that, everybody's different. But here's the thing. We all have the same brain in the sense of its actual physiological makeup, the same processes, right? It just works differently with the neuroreceptors and the synaptics based on our experience, our genetics, our trauma, things like that affect us. Like PTSD tends to affect the amygdala and shrink the hippocampus. But what I mean along the lines of like, a Glock is used in different ways, right? Some people are slower with a Glock. Some people are faster with a Glock. Some people are really crappy with a Glock first time, and some people are really good with a Glock first time. Doesn't matter though. It's user how it's done. The Glock is still made the same, Same thing with our brains. Our brains are all made the same. We still have a hippocampus, a limbic system. We still have a prefrontal cortex responsible for rational thought. And it's not like we have to be neuroscientists to begin to study our brains. We just have to be able to understand some of the basics of how we process information and how our behavior is affected with an external stimulus versus the internal. Understand what the mind is and how it's separate from the brain. But once we begin to learn certain things and understand how information is processed, we can then begin to understand really our own inner workings, right? Once you get the basic information of what makes up a brain, how certain specific important things to know, like what the amygdala is. If you have PTSD or TBI, you should know what the amygdala is. You should know more about the limbic system. You should know more about the prefrontal cortex. And studying that was I'd been to a counselor before and talked to him, and it just didn't help me. And I had pretty bad anxiety at the time, and I was like, well, I'm going to study what the brain is. Why am I leaving my own anatomy up to some professional that has, a medical degree, which is great. Yeah, they're institutionally, they have more information, but it's generalized. I want specific information. Why does my brain operate it does? Why is my mind differently? Why do I think differently? And how do I process information? And where does anxiety come from inside the brain? What is a dopamine? What is an oxytocin? What is an endorphin? How do these work? And once we begin to understand those basics of information, it's not like you have to be a neuroscientist. You just have to understand, man, I'm feeling like crap today. What do I need? You know what? I
Did you
need
did
dopamine.
you open your owner's manual?
Well, the
You,
internet
you know
seems
the
to have a
owner's
lot of
manual
owners.
that came with your
Yeah.
life. Did you finally open it a little bit ago? Did
Um,
you start reading the lawnmower operating manual?
well, I
Like
think we
any man
should.
out there who refuses to read operating manuals, did you just finally pick it up?
No, you figure it out, and then over time, you look at other operating manuals, or you find one and you write one yourself. And maybe
That's
that's
right.
what we need to do is we need to write our own operator manual based on information that we can get about our makeup, about who we are and what we are as human beings, the biology that we have, our phenotypes, our morphology. Um, but we need to take a keen interest in ourselves and stop leaving it up to professionals to pay them. It's like, well, if I can learn the basic user level maintenance of myself and understand, it's like, oh, I feel like crap. Why? Well, I haven't had oxytocin in a while. Well, how do I get oxytocin? Well, I go hug my wife. I spend time with someone I love. Oh, I need endorphins. Why do I need endorphins? Okay, well, I'm feeling pain in my body. What do I need to do to get rid of that pain? I go do something that's positively engaging. I go work out. I go do this. I go do that. So it's troubleshooting your body, your mind, by having basic user level maintenance. And we should learn more about that, including understanding and getting diagnosed with ADHD, or figuring out and confirming that. Because once you confirm an actual problem inside any malfunction of any car or vehicle or your brain, your body, you begin to then look at the right information to correct the malfunction.
So here's my challenge back to you, and I agree with you, 100%. I agree with you. The challenge is, as Shaun said, we're lazy. Right? Like as a human being, we seek for efficiencies. How to do this easier? How do we not use as much energy? How do I do this without sacrificing this? And unfortunately, in our new day and age, right? If I want to go see a doctor, he has more information than me, or she has more information than me. Okay, cool. Tell me what the problem is, and then how do I fix it? And they say, here's the problem. Take these pills. And then those pills will solve all your problems. And then you come back and you say, well, now I have this other problem. They say, great, take these pills. And then and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this has been the challenge for the last 20 years with post-traumatic stress, TBI, OSIs, you're talking even ADHD. All these things are great to have in terms of knowledge. But then to our point earlier, Shaun, we were talking about this, is that we will, and I say we because I did for a while, you accept the knowledge of the person based on their hierarchical system. This person's a doctor. They went to school. They should know what's right. And then you just either accept that or you don't. And for a lot of troops, a lot of the veterans I know, they just accept what the doctors told them because that's what they were trained to do. And so this is where the challenge is. And I know for me, what separated that was I needed to find a specialist because I was not getting better. I was getting worse. And in that getting worse, I was like, man, this is not on. Time to do something different. And then I worked with horses and so on and so forth. And Absook jumped on the Instagram side, said Travis Bader brought up a really good point a while back talking about his struggle with ADHD. He says that ADHD brains are much more wired for nature and that outdoor therapy has helped him a ton. And I agree. Same thing with horses for me.
And we've talked about it with Travis on the
about it
podcast before in respect to nature. Travis and I see almost identically eye to eye in respect to ADHD and nature. That's why damn near every day in my life, I'm up in the mountains leaning against a tree. That's why you'll see me ride my mountain bike. That's why you'll see me do knuckle push-ups. That's why you see me kicking sticks in midair out in the bush. It's because it's good for my head. When I say it's good for my head, people will hear that and think, I'm trying to fix my head. My head is broken. I need to put a Band-Aid on my head. That's not true, man. Nature is good for me to allow me to expand, to be better. I'm already pretty good, but I focus every day on getting better. And by better, I mean like more capable, more thoughtful, wiser, all of the good stuff. But literally every day, I try to expand into what I'm setting up for the day. And that typically requires me to be in nature. At the very least, in my own backyard, looking at the mountains, picking cherry tomatoes. I don't have to be all raderific 9000 doing 360s in midair. But if I'm in nature, literally smelling a cherry tomato as I freshly picked it, the warmth when I put it in my mouth, that like frickin' instant cherry tomato goodness, like you can't buy that on a shelf. You can only experience it within seconds of picking it off the vine. And so that's what we're supposed to do in life. We're supposed to experience moments that expand us, not just consume our time.
That's a great point.
Mindfulness, I think, is so important. What you're talking about. That's why I live in the mountains, literally. I have a cabin on 2 acres here. As far as the outdoors goes, 100%, especially for veterans. I started a nonprofit in 2016, taking veterans outdoors, hunting, hiking, camping, and fishing, and ran it for about 6 years, and then turned it over to a buddy of mine. I had so much going on, but that's 100% true. Is there are days when I'm stuck in the house
Do you
and
miss
I'm
it?
like, why do I feel like crap? Do
you
I
miss
miss it?
Yeah.
Sometimes, but I think I did my part. I started it because I was dealing my own shit, and of course, as we as veterans, what we do best is instead of actually attacking what's bothering us, we distract ourselves by helping other people.
That's
Because
right.
what are we doing? We're chasing the dopamine. It's like if I help these people, I'll feel less like a piece of crap. And so instead of dealing with it, we just distract ourselves. The same with
This is a new idea
anything
to
else
me.
we
Is
do.
this?
Yeah, we distract ourselves from the anxiety that we have, and then it comes back later twofold. That's why people drink. That's why people find activities. Everything that we do in life, like going on a equine, helping out with horses and stuff like that, is a temporary distraction from the anxiety we have. We have to give our minds, our brains a break. I don't know if you guys noticed something. You're like, oh, I have anxiety. Well, you can either sit and dwell on it and let your brain pick you apart, and tear you apart and put you back together like an ADHD kid, or you can go do something that um, attacks your amygdala. Your amygdala is working overtime. It's hijacking your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for rational thought. So what do? You go do something that engages your prefrontal cortex, that gives your amygdala a break, that depowers your amygdala. And so what I used to do was bone carving, or I used to just help veterans out. That distracted my brain long enough where I could let that anxiety pass, engage my prefrontal cortex, and do something and not feel like crap. But eventually like anything else that does come back. Well, what you do is you focus in on something that you get really good at. All right. I feel like anxiety. What I was doing was bone carving. I was taking those ferro rods and then putting them in antlers to make like antler handles for ferro rods that you scrape and make a fire off. And I was taking dental bits and a Dremel and really carving innate designs. And what was happening was I was digging a hole in my brain when I was doing that, and I was shoving the anxiety down in there because now I was engaging my prefrontal cortex. It was distracting me from my amygdala, trying to tell me that there's something I should be worried about. Like what? I don't know, just worry. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So the more that I did that, the better I got at it, because now the more you do something, the more experience you get, the better you get at it, right? And so I put that down, and the anxiety would come back. I go back to it because I knew that's what was working. This is why people get addictive personalities, because they're trying to distract themselves from their anxiety. And like you said, humans are lazy. What's one of the easiest ways most people take care of their anxiety? They get to drinking, right? That's easy. It's quick. It's effective. Instead of doing something constructive, they do something destructive. We humans are our own worst creatures. And then what's funny is that the more I got, the more anxiety I had, the better I got at bone carving, to the point where people are like, I want to buy that from you. Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. I will make one for you and I'll sell it to you. Oh, I'm starting to get dopamine. My anxiety becomes less, starting to get dopamine because people want my craft, right? It's because I'm good at it now. Because anxiety, you can almost turn anxiety into a positive money making type of thing if you have the right motivation. And you said that's like where people are lazy. Like the execution sucks because sometimes you just don't want to do the work. We can cure ourselves. We just don't want to do the work. We want to hand it off to other people that have more experience, because we don't want to study. We don't want to research. We don't want to look for the right paths to learn, because we are lazy. We human beings take the path of least resistance. You are absolutely right. And what causes change in a person has to be the proper motivation. And what is usually the proper motivation as human beings? It's when we
Pain.
hit rock bottom. It's when we
Yeah.
get so far down that we hate ourselves so much. You either become on the verge of death, we become on the verge of loss of everything before we find that motivation to be willful and intentful about what it is that we need to prove ourselves. And it sucks, but that's part of human nature. And if we're mindful enough, we can detect that, but we still have to have the proper motivation. Do I want to improve myself? What is that spark? It might be losing your family. It might be a threat of losing your family, a threat of losing your life, a threat of losing a job. What is that motivation? Unfortunately for us and human beings, or veterans in nature, it takes that complete almost loss of something before it motivates us to really change. And that's when I stopped drinking a year ago, or a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So I have a thought on this, and I love where you're going with this, Brady. And it's probably a little too late to jump into this in the podcast, but I want to do it anyway because I think this is great. You said that we almost have to be on the brink of death to get the change to happen. And I want to push this a little bit farther, because I think that it's not just about kind of or maybe on the brink of death. I think the death is something that we need to seek. Not physical death, but the death of the idea of who we were. Exactly. It's an internal death on the inside. And I remember hearing about this in reference to puberty with a lot of teenagers, why there's a lot of suicide ideation at a teenage level when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, is that there is a death that is happening. That's something that you are seeking to die off, is your inner, that child, to become an adult, to enter into something else, right? And so the way you put that made me think about it in terms of that. I think is what we need to seek now, is seek that discomfort to the level that that thing needs to either die or transform or change or move into the next realm or whatever it is. And I'm digging it. Shaun, you look like you're a bit skeptical. What do you got?
I'm cautionary. I'm not skeptical. I want to be cautionary on a couple of things that I'm going to say.
That's a good word. I like it.
Yeah. So, first things first, we were using a broad analogy about how your vehicle, you look after your vehicle. You know, if something goes wrong with it, you got to fix it, you maintain your vehicle. But eventually you drive your vehicle long enough, it needs an oil change. And when the oil change time comes, you get a decision. Do you change the oil yourself, or do you take it to an oil changing professional? call it a therapist, call it whatever you want. And that's the first binary decision you have to make when you're looking after your vehicle. Change the oil myself or take it to the pro. I don't care which one you choose, but both have consequences, upside and downside. And those are things that you've got to think about. But here's my cautionary tale is if you get it in your head that you're quirky, you're ADHD, you love knowledge, you love learning things, you love how to change oil. In fact, you believe that you found the secret to oil changing and you're gonna do it. You're gonna explore it to the degree where you're the only one on the planet who's discovered the oil change secret. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. While you're writing that book about the world's new form of oil changing on your driveway all by yourself for the first time, that's the moment when you should get context, when you should look around and ask your friends, hey, I've just developed a new oil change system in my mind. I'm going to give it a go. What do you guys think? That's when you pay attention to the feedback. That's when you listen to the world around you. Same if you decide, I don't know jack about cars, but my car needs an oil change. I'm going to take it to a professional, a random professional that I don't care about, somewhere in the yellow pages. Well, that is also not the right approach. That's when you should ask your friends, hey, do you know a place to get a good oil change? Thanks, man. And so one of the natures of ADHD is you can be in your head so much that you believe that you've got all the answers as well as all the problems. And so it's good to have a mirror, a friend, a reflection to get context on. I just wanted to throw that out there, Chance, as the clarifier, as it were.
No, I dig it. And this is, to your point, not only should you be asking your friends, hey, where do you get your guys' oil changed? Which I don't know if that conversation would go very well in a veteran-centric
I was like,
it's going to get a bit weird pretty fast here. But you should be asking them, like, what do you do for your oil change? Not only where do you take it, do you do it yourself? Could you teach me how? I'd love to learn more about this, because you're always going to find somebody that they've been big into engines their whole life. They've been in a mechanical aspect throughout their whole lives. And I know guys that struggled with issues for a very short period of time after getting out of the military, but because they had a whole bunch of other skill sets that they could apply to that situation afterwards. So I just love I love where we're going with this. Brady, what are you thinking?
Well, what he mentioned was peer review. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that you shouldn't go see a professional eventually or go see a professional to begin with. What I am saying is have a base level knowledge of your own self, of your own brain, of your vehicle, right? That's what self-reliance is about. And we should actually encourage self-reliance. And I think most of us men like the idea of self-reliance. Instead of calling someone to rewire my car and stuff, I've been learning it myself. Been using YouTube and a flathead screwdriver to take apart my car. And I've been learning how to put headlights in and fog lights. And now I'm going to run today. Eventually, I'm going to put in a backup camera. But I've learned these things, these basic level bit of wiring and information that now has made me self-reliant. And I think and I think you're so right in what you say, as far as, you do need to talk to your friends. That's called peer reviewing. They're taking this information that you've learned, this new way of changing your oil that is done. Well, that information might be out there that someone already might have come across that, and you might have been like, oh, okay, someone is out there. It's good to ask around. It's good to talk to people, because now you get different perspectives, and you start peer reviewing your own information to figure out where those quirks are, where you're wrong, where you're right, where can you prove, where can you, you know, disprove yourself, right? So it's trying to fine tune that information, but having base level knowledge. There are techniques and exercises out there where a human can practice mindfulness to kind of snap out of that bad spot in their brain, like box breathing, like meditation. And these are things that are constantly said and done. But the execution on it, it's a consistency as well. And I think that's what people is, even when you execute on something, you're not consistent about it. That's like anybody else. They start taking medication, they start feeling good. So, well, I feel good now. So they stop taking medication. They didn't realize that the medication was actually the reason why they feel good now. Same thing with consistency. You stop doing something because, oh, it works, or I've gotten into shape, or I feel better now these days. And you start getting complacent because
Lazy.
it's worked. Yeah, you start getting lazy. Same thing with prayer, or same thing with theology and your faith and all these other things. Is you stop doing it once you feel good, and it's only when you start feeling like crap is when you go back to those old techniques. Where if you realized if you kept doing what you were doing, you wouldn't have to go back. And I
Life
love that
lessons,
you
though.
talked. Yeah, and I love where you talked about Big Bird um, was just that this idea of death, like different forms of death, whether it's a physical death, a spiritual death, a mental death, an ego death. And I think that's where a big thing is that we men need to experience at one point is an ego death. This either self-inflicted humbleness um, or whether someone inflicts it upon you is this, oh, it's like when you think you're a badass until you get punched in the nose, or until you go to jujitsu and you realize that the senior scrawny kid in high school just folded you.
The break right there.
Well,
Great
good.
face on. But he's accurate. This is a great point. Is that the ego death needs to happen? I think for basically everybody, and
Well,
jujitsu is a great way to do it. I say pretty much everybody.
I only take issue with the loose title of ego death because and
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
a
that I'm
pretty
taking issue. It's
yeah.
so nebulous.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's people who can't spell ego. And so, like, the definition is poor at best. And so, because it's poorly defined, it is misinterpreted within a party or two. And next thing you know, it's several people in a room are talking about ego death, and not a one of them is talking about the same thing. So, I just want to throw that out there. The other thing that I want to say is I made a statement where if you're we'll call it an ADHD thinker, you can spend a lot of the time thinking that you're dreaming up genius ideas and believing it. It's a thing for sure. Now, I got no problems with that because I do it myself. People have seen me do it. On my Instagram account, sometimes I'll be in a mood to create an equation that no one on the planet has ever created before through a lens of high performance leadership, et cetera, et cetera. I'll create an equation that I've just never, ever, ever seen anyone address before. And it doesn't matter if it goes anywhere or goes nowhere. That's not that important to me. When I am interested in something, that's it, that's all. And I will pursue. And where it takes me is almost of no consequence to me or anyone else. Where it will take me is where I go. And so when I end up wherever I end up, I'll either shift my gaze elsewhere or I'll look for commentary from everyone else. And not in the sense of I'm a crazy or I'm a genius. I'm not talking about that kind of feedback. I'm talking about what do you think? Just as we were talking earlier, Chance, at the start of the show, when someone comes up in front of me or someone comes up in front of you and you kind of need to get a moment figured out, you just got to, what's up? What's going on here? What do you guys think? And so I don't want anyone out there to squash their natural ADHD curiosity. In fact, what I am saying is I love quirky people. And if you aren't using your quirky powers to their full extent, that ain't cool either. So we all have to find our balance. I love going maximum quirky, but then sometimes I've got to dial it way back to zero. But for me, my balance somewhere in the middle is where I operate best. But don't be afraid to go either side.
I said it on Wednesday. Don't be afraid of your capability, and I think that's a lot of people get stuck on is we get really afraid of what we're actually capable of, or the responsibility of what it is we're putting ourselves forward into. Because I know I struggle with it. I know a lot of guys that have struggled with it as well, in the fact that, yeah, it's great that I'm going to go fix all the cars. I know how to fix everybody's mind. Now I'm going to go do this and I'm going to help all the people. But then that means that all those people's mindset is my responsibility. And then it starts to degrade that idea pretty fast. So there's a balance with everything. And I dig this. Now we are a little bit before 2 hours here, and Brady, man, thanks for jumping in halfway. This was just awesome conversation, Shaun. Appreciate the hours worth of man, not quite knife handing, but questioning.
And
questioning.
Dude, I didn't even address the teenage ego death. Quote,
I know.
Quote,
that's going to be a whole thing that we're gonna have to do a show on. Yeah, it won't be Men's Mental Health Month again. We're not doing that over again. But I just, really appreciate it. Appreciate all the questions, the comments. I got a couple I want to touch on before we shut her down, and we'll do some final thoughts. Dan C. jumped in here. He said, thanks for this, Brady. It's so gratifying to hear you talk along with the ADHD. I am also on the autism spectrum, like WTF. Catherine jumped in here, said, great show. Namaste. And Dan C. says, October 27th, 2009. For me, Brady, congrats, brother, on being dry from there. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I just really appreciate it. So any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain? Probably, Brady, you got quite a bit, but what do you got?
Well, you know me, I can ramble on and talk forever. So my apologies, and thank you for your patience, and thank you for the kind words for everybody. I guess my end comment is learn to clear your mental malfunction. Start learning more about yourself. Yes, go see an expert, but you don't have to leave everything to the experts. You can start learning more about your brain, about your mind, and your physiology. And we have the power, the information, and don't rely too much on ChatGPT. Just kind of help with the big words and bigger concepts, but start learning more about your own mind and your brain. And that's where you start finding the answers that you're looking for is right here with your own self-study.
I dig it. Shaun, any thoughts?
Yeah, but I can't build it out too much because maybe we'll do it another time. I've been thinking quite a lot about this thing that I'm going to mention here in a sec. I've been thinking about it for months now. And the title, of course, if you're at all tracking human performance or high performance on the internet, there's this idea that our sense of this world around us, it's just a perception box. So we'll call our heads the perception box. Our brain, our mind, our head, whatever you want to call it. This thing from the neck up, it's a perception box. It perceives reality. And reality is reality, but your perception is different than reality. So the perception box is balanced on top of a high performance machine potential. We're all born with a body that has high performance potential. So now we've got a box on top of a machine. And then in the middle somewhere, just like the Tin Man, there's a heart, or there's a soul, or there's a presence, or there's an essence, or there's some spirituality inside of us. And so we've got the perception box rested on top of the high performance machine with the soul sitting somewhere inside of us. And when you take those three things and you think about it for a long time, it doesn't much matter if you've got ADHD or not. It doesn't much matter if you've got the acronym or not. If you're a perception box on top of a high performance machine with a soul in the middle, that's all you got to figure out. That's all that life is, generally speaking. So when you take those three things, it's now for you to decide what to do with them. The uniquely trifecta combination of you, perception, performance, soul, that trifecta, you get about 60 years to play with it. The first 20 barely count because you're not doing much in your first 20. You've got about another 60 to go. And in those 60, you get to leave your mark, whatever that mark is. And your mark is either personal, or it's institutional, or it's global. That's for you to figure out where your focus lies. But you got about 60 years to take the trifecta and do something good with it, with that little journey that we're all on. The rest is just white noise. The rest is distraction and obfuscation. The moment that you can dial into the trifecta and start focusing it in the direction that it deserves, that's when your life will change.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to add. The only thing that's still floating around in my head is the fact that Brady called this an emotional support podcast, and I love it. Like it's like a service dog, but podcast. It's a service podcast. We just got to get a vest wrapped around it, and we'll be all set. I do, again, really appreciate the convo, Brady and Shaun. This has been awesome as we all continue to learn, build, and grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo. Thanks, everybody, for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.